All right, we should be live. Um, I'm Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World, and this is our live chat on RapidStart for Dynamics GP and Rapid Implementations. And we are joined today with two real experts on the topic. We have first from Microsoft, Senior Product Manager for Dynamics GP, Jay Manley. Hey, Jay.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You're joining us from Fargo today.
You bet.
All right, thanks for being here. And we are also joined by author and Dynamics GP implementation expert, Gloria Braunschweig. Hey, Gloria.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, joining us from Portland, Oregon. Is that right?
Yes.
The Computeration offices?
Computeration offices. The office dog is here. The chicken is here.
Excellent. This is the same chicken from the cover of your new book?
Well, she is the inspiration for the cover, but we did honor the ceramic artist. I should stress it is a ceramic chicken, not a live one. But we honored the artist, and so we used her for inspiration. And I'd be glad to show a picture of the real one, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And we thought these two topics, both the book on rapid implementation and the new release of the rapid implementation, the RapidStart product release and the rapid implementation book release, kind of went well together for discussion on, what's going on with Dynamics GP in terms of, driving more fast implementations, what it means for the product, what it means for customers. And so I thought we'd maybe start kind of with some of the basics of the RapidStart product, and that's why we're so glad to have Jay here. Jay, maybe we could start with with some of those sort of more basic questions about what does it mean to run RapidStart? What are some of the benefits that customers should be recognizing from using the latest release?
Yeah, so the main thing with the product is that there's really two portions of it. One is the configuration, and that is a tool that we can utilize to rapidly configure Dynamics GP. And the great thing about that is we also allow you to save configurations. So if you want to think about building out a library of different configurations and then reusing them for many different customers, new customers, that can greatly enhance the amount of time that it takes to go live with a new customer. The other tool that we have is the data migration portion, and with the data migration portion, what that allows you to do is quickly go from one of three different data sources into Dynamics GP. The first data source is just an Excel spreadsheet, actually a series of spreadsheets that you can bring data into, and then from there you can push that into Dynamics GP, but also two competitive products. One, of course, being QuickBooks, which is probably the one that we are most concerned about. We see a lot of people wanting, when they grow up, so to speak, in their ERP needs, one of the first products they look to go to is Dynamics GP. And so we have a nice conversion from their product to ours, as well as Peachtree, Sage Peachtree, and Sage, I believe it's Sage 50. I'm not sure that other one that was just added just recently as well.
And in terms of getting customers from Sage or from QuickBooks, to GP, what does that say about the kind of customers that you see in the future for the product?
Well, I think we're still going to have the traditional customers that we've always had, which are those customers that are what we would consider our normal consultative project. You go in and you figure out their needs and go through the whole process. But I think that there's a whole other level of customer that we haven't been addressing historically, and that is customers that really don't require a lot from us. It isn't that high-touch environment that we've been used to in the past. This instead is more of a situation where we're trying to just, we win the customer on a Sunday without ever doing a demo for them. They buy the product merely on its feature set. And what we want to do with those is we want to reduce that risk of implementation. And because the CXO, when they look at implementation of any ERP system, their greatest fear at the end of the day is that risk of going live, and so we need to figure out a way to reduce that. And so that's one of the things I think that this tool helps very greatly with, is reducing that risk.
Gloria, would you agree in terms of the idea of risk being at the front of the executive's mind?
Yes, the executives in the SMB market, the small and medium businesses, um, they may not have ever executive managed an implementation before. They don't have a good skill set, therefore. So they're concerned. Everybody's concerned when you don't quite know what's ahead of you. So alleviating that degree of concern, lowering the risk, and coaching them along with actual, um, effective management tools from
Hmm.
both a software standpoint and a culture standpoint, we found to be very effective.
Jay, talk a little more about how the configuration tools in RapidStart work. Who's going to be using them primarily, and what are some of the key improvements that are there in the latest release?
Sure. So the person that's going to care the most about this, or how the tool is used initially, I think was your first question, is think of all of the configuration that has to occur in an ERP system. You have, the way the chart of accounts looks, how many segments you have. You have all of the information around, posting accounts and how you want things to flow in the system. And there's just, if you think of it as a bunch of switches, there's hundreds and hundreds of switches in any ERP system. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to allow a person to go into this tool and quickly set up and configure the tool without being actually in the product. The great thing is that what ends up happening here is that as you build out a library of these configurations, then you can send in a more junior consultant to go in and do this implementation, because with these configurations that hopefully our partners will be saving over time, they'll be in that 80 to 90% complete category for the total setup. Some of the big improvements this time in the tool have been around thinking more like a consultant. The tool initially was created in a wizard-based environment, which you would think would be a good thing. But typically what happens in a consultative project is you don't have all of the information given to you at any one time. And so what would happen with the wizard is you would be entering the information in the wizard in the order that they forced you through. You'd get to a certain point and you wouldn't have a piece of information, and you would have to quit. And then when you go back in, you'd have to go all the way up to that same point, just past it, and then maybe there was another spot you had to quit. It was very frustrating. So with this tool, I think what we did is we think more like a consultant, and I let them go in a more of a questionnaire-based approach, complete the sections that they have information for, and then wait on the sections that they don't. But I let them save it mid-process, which means that they can get some of the work done as they have that information, and you're not forced through a process that really didn't make much sense. So the product thinks more like a consultant does at this point. I think it's a really cool change to be able to do that.
What about the reusability aspect of it? Does this lend itself more to sort of building out either profiles or building out ways of working with the tool?
Well, like I mentioned before, the idea is that we're hoping that partners build out an actual library of configurations and store them so that the next time they go into, let's say, a mom and pop grocery shop, and they've already done 3 or 4 of these, they've saved those configurations and they can go pull from those and say, okay, this one is really close to what we did before for another company. Let's grab their configuration, make some the necessary changes with things like company name, things like that, and then just push that right in. And literally, then instead of going through let's say a 16-hour configuration process, we're more in the neighborhood of 16 minutes. So right there, I mean, just think of that. You're going from 2 days of consultative time down to a quarter of an hour. That's a significant savings on any project. And then they can use that extra time for things of value like deeper BI and reporting, or more of the stuff that's really needed by the business to be successful, not just setup. Setup is really seen as a necessary evil, so why don't we offload that and take that away?
Well, Gloria, you're an early adopter of RapidStart, of the latest release. You know, in light of Jay's comments there, and in terms of making it more reusable, building profiles, what's been your team's experience? How has your team been using it so far?
Well, we've used RapidStart from the first version that was released back with what, version 10 or 2010. I have version creep after so many years. We have one customer, for instance, and every time we go into this customer, which may be 2 weeks apart, they've got a couple more company databases. They have approximately 90 at this point. So he's a very technical, the CFO is very technical. So we've taught him to use the tools, and inside of 30 minutes, he can have a new company set up. So he's very pleased with that. We have a number of those types of serial entrepreneurs. We have other companies with 50 company databases, 10 or 20 company databases. So we either use the tool or we've taught the technical customer how to use it. And then in combination with virtualized machines, with hosting, we're starting to create a good database of company templates that we can use. We have an implementation that will start next week that has absolute drop dead date 5 weeks out. Their busy season occurs June through September. So we have to be deployed by June. And at this point, they don't even have a server to deploy on. So the server comes in next week, and then we start to implement. And they not only want to be live by June 1st, they want to be competent by June 1st. So we talked to them about RapidStart. They absolutely said, yes, this is the way we want to go. They are not pressuring us to bring in historical data of any kind. They just want to be live and operative by June 1st. So it's a perfect scenario for RapidStart.
It sounds like actually, Jay, let me just make a technical note here. I don't know if there's anything we can do on the fly, but it looks like your camera froze up. Again, maybe nothing we can do here, and that's fine, but I just want to note it.
Yeah, I've got it on, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Gloria, you mentioned agreeing not to bring in legacy data. Is that right? And that sounds like that would be a key determination in a project scope and the complexity of it, especially with such a tight time frame.
Definitely, yes. On the majority of our implementations, we bring in general ledger history. 1 to 2 years is probably the minimum. But this particular client said, if we can't get it in, I'm not going to worry about it. I just want to start up as of June 1st and be totally competent on the system. So she said, we'll just keep the old server and keep the old system around on it. If I need to go back to it, I will. It's a privately held $20 million company, so there's no auditors to deal with. We will prototype them. We prototype everybody. Most of our prototypes, however, though, we've gotten so good with them, and we've got such good SQL people here that we will prototype and just move the prototype into the live environment almost every time. So
you mentioned, well, I think the previous customer you had mentioned where the CFO is technical. What are some of those criteria that, if people are wondering, can my customer, or if you are a customer, can I use RapidStart myself and take ownership of some of those duties? What are some of the criteria that you would evaluate them on?
We just sit down and chat with them and find out what their background is. The ability to give them a prototype environment in a virtualized environment that we can restore very quickly if we need to is probably key to that. And it just takes a measure of tactfulness and honesty if we see things going south. If they do something real early on that just shows bad technical judgment, we just step back and say, I don't think this is going to work. We need to help you on this. At that point, the decision's in their hands, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I'll add to that is that, I think all customers should be aware that the tool is out there, and I think they should, be looking for their partners to utilize this tool. One of the great things with this tool is that reduction in the time that it takes for configuration. The other area is that if the customer is adding similar companies, I think it's a tool that they can fairly easily use. We document how to take one of their existing companies and basically use that same configuration in yet another company.
Whoops.
Oh, Jay, you still there?
I think we just lost him completely.
Jay, I'm sorry. I think I might have done something to your presence. Oh, maybe he was back and he disappeared again. Jay, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, we can hear you. We can't see you, but that's still glad to have you back. Okay.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
I'm not sure quite where that ended, but basically what I was going to say is if a company is creating or adding another company that's like their existing companies, they can utilize the tool very easily to kind of replicate that and create yet another company in their own system.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The big thing is that they should be looking for their partners to be using this tool. If if they're concerned about the cost of implementation and they see a partner going along and not using this tool as part of their process, the question should be asked of that partner: why aren't you using this tool?
Yeah, even in situations where they do want to bring over history, we frequently start with the RapidStart, and then we do additional integrations of the historical transactions if the client wants it. It definitely takes a consultant with the understanding of what has to be purged from the system when we re-import transactions, and we have to wipe out the beginning balances and go back to the detail.
Well, that's an area that that maybe we could talk about a little more. What some of those migration details would be. Gloria, I know you talked about master records and transactions. Are there things that might be assumptions that you can or can't migrate?
Well, the RapidStart doesn't. It basically is bringing in your opening balances in your key modules. So if we have a client that just is adamant that they need general ledger history, that's the most common one, for multiple year comparative reporting, then we can just go in and SQL truncate pretty darn quickly and open file of beginning balances and then import the transaction history. So that's pretty straightforward with the tools that we use or the integration manager. And that's probably the biggest change that we see is they want that GL comparative history. Usually with the small customers, as soon as we tell them what it's going to cost to bring in AP and AR and inventory history, that usually makes them take pause because that apply to record is complex and time consuming to set up. We can do it fairly quickly with QuickBooks because we've done it enough, but we run into all kinds of legacy software.
What can make it more difficult in terms of legacy software? Are there key characteristics you would look at that would say this is going to be a more time-consuming and more expensive migration?
Yes, usually within the first 2 weeks of any implementation, as soon as it's sold, I get one of the developers into the implementation and capture legacy data. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at legacy data just as quickly as we can because that's where the scope can really change if we have to import any of that legacy data. Being able to drop it into Excel or SQL tables can really help them speed up the process, speed up the cleaning process. We went into an implementation about 1.5 years ago on an old AUX system, a green screen system on an IBM System 34 that was 14 years old. We could not imagine that computer was even reliably running. And as we implemented, that became questionable. It would crash anywhere from 2 to 6 times a day. Ultimately, we were not able to get all the history files out simply because of the shortcomings of that machine, and that cost the client a lot of their hours trying to extract data, a lot of our hours trying to clean it. 80% of their transactions were garbage. So that took a lot of cleaning, a lot of SQL scripting and import work. And eventually we failed at the sales order processing. We couldn't even get the data extracted from the old machine.
You know, one of the things that I'll mention is that any time that you're going from a legacy ERP system, anything that's out there, to Dynamics GP, the one thing that you need to really be aware of is what's going to happen during that process, the process from migrating from one to another system. And one of the great things that I found, actually, and I know this probably will lead in a little bit, but is preparation of the customer, their mindset and what they're thinking. And that's actually one of the great things that I found with Gloria's book is really, it talks to the customer about how they need to mentally prepare for the efforts that are required. I mean, when she talked about the data migration that just occurred, you know, I bet when they went into that, they had no idea that they were going to be spending that amount of time trying to get that history out. And that's the problem, is most people think, well, it's just data, I should just be able to move it. But there's really a mindset around converting from one system to another, and that's where I think that, you know, some of the stories that Gloria tells in her book really shed light on what they need to think about and how they need to think about it.
Right, right. Well, I appreciate that, Jay. It's definitely, I mean, the tools help us, they give us the confidence. You know, this last customer that we went into, and it's, you know, it's one of those bluebird sales. They called me up on Monday. We met with them, I think, on Wednesday in a 3-hour meeting and walked away with a check and a signed service agreement. It just doesn't get much easier than that. They were very realistic about bringing their data over. They're being a little bit difficult about a new server. But the small companies just, they don't have the experience that the larger company with a CFO who's been around the block a few times, they just don't have the experience. So they just see the tip of the iceberg. And it really helps to use the RapidStart to at least be able to show them something quickly about what they're getting into. And I would say most of them take a step back at that point and go, okay, this is a little bit bigger task than I thought it was. And it just helps to give them their data in the system as quickly as we can, so they can start using it and training with it and helping them prepare for the entire implementation.
Sorry, Jake, do you want to jump in, or?
No, I thought you were asking a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Gloria, about how, project management enters into a lot of these conversations in terms of a lot of the planning and the foresight. I know, just to get back to your book a bit, a lot of the implementation stories tend to revolve to some extent around appreciating good project management. How does that factor in, A, to using a tool like RapidStart, but B, to really just managing, the kickoff of and scoping of some of these new projects as they get off the ground? And if you have any, stories from the book that maybe illustrate that, or points from the book, please do share.
Yeah, the project manager is probably one of the other big challenges that we face with the SMBs. They will take an existing employee and appoint them as project manager. That person may have no implementation experience, no project management experience. And if the executive in charge has not said, okay, I'm going to backfill you, I'm going to give you someone else to help you for a period of time, boy, we really get into trouble with those quickly. And the way that we have to handle them, we see a lot of them start out and then they start to falter because the executive simply is not being supportive of the project manager and the implementation team. Having the book and having the stories of, look, this was out of our control and this is what happened in a similar situation. It's just a matter of bringing reality to them in a way that hopefully they'll accept it. The tone of the book, there's a lot of light humor in it. There's a lot of stories of failure when the implementation leaves our control and goes into the hands of a company that doesn't understand taking on the responsibility and providing the time and resources that they need. So my goal is to make the small companies more aware of what the process needs to be so we have fewer failures. We look at some of the hosted software that's out there on the internet today, and the churn with it is very obvious, and I believe it's just inadequate preparation of the client or the project ahead of them. So improving that success rate is the real goal.
Professional project management seems to be one of those maybe related themes that you talk about. A project manager who is either PMP certified or has some other kind of certification, has experience in methodologies that are sort of tried and true that they can call upon in a new implementation, seems like, from your experience, to bring a whole nother level of talent to a project. And even to the point where I think in one of the stories in the book, or maybe even a couple, a professional project manager could look and very quickly assess the health of a project that was either starting or that was starting to go off the rails a bit, without really needing all that much time to assess it. Would you agree?
Yes. Todd Williams, a good business associate of mine, wrote a book on Rescue the Problem Project, and he and I both agree that usually inside of 30 minutes we can start to spot the trouble. It's like there's either a section or an entire chapter on dealing with what I call the holdout, and there's always a holdout. There's always somebody at a small company who is less inclined to implement or participate in the implementation than everybody else. And I always win the stories about the worst holdout that anybody's ever had, which is kind of a sad story. But that project manager and sensing the status of the project, we're approaching actually more than 50% of our implementations now. We've picked up in the last 2 years a number of what we call orphan clients. They failed at their first implementation and we picked them back up again. And I have to admit, with my experience, I can go in and pretty darn quickly assess, was it the implementer, was it the company? It's never 100% on either side, so we have to work with what we've got at the client and pretty tactfully explain to them how they need to change process.
Got it. The book really does include stories from quite a range of times. I mean, there's stories from a time when GP was in much earlier releases, when people were still having their secretaries handle all the computer work for them. Why now? Why was now a good time to put together this book?
Good question. Well, it really came, I started the book last June and just decided with this last implementation for what is considered a small company, but a $40-50 million company, where we started out on such a good foot with good promises made by the executives at the company, and then we no more got started and they pulled the CFO completely out of the project. The company got hit with a sales tax audit, an IRS audit, and they purchased another company all during the implementation. So the CFO just bounced in and out. he was virtually useless during the implementation phases. And yet it was just totally out of our control. And ultimately, I gave him an early copy of the book and just, when he said, boy, we're really struggling. And I said, you have committed almost every sin that a company can commit. And I thought, I just I can't keep seeing companies do this. Somehow I have to get the message out that they need to do a better job. So that was really the impetus. And then Jay came along after I blogged on one of the chapters and said, hey, we'd really like you to do some more writing on this.
And you really did have quite a bit of discussion on this. You really tried to highlight it at Convergence this past year. What was the response there from your fellow GP practitioners?
Well, a couple of the GP practitioners, especially the ones on the RapidStart committee, Cindy Reeves with TriBridge, was just great. She says, I'm giving this to every one of my consultants. And I think the big thing is that there was a reaction that the book was for consultants. Well, there's probably 50% of it or more directed right towards the small company. So I start the book out addressing the executive management. There's chapters in there on project management. There's chapters in there on the tool set. There's chapters in there for the technical people on the tool set and setup options. And then everybody said, well, keep the momentum going up even at the very end of the book. And those chapters end up being some of the most popular because they're all the fraud stories that I've encountered over the last 25, 30 years. So it's an entertaining book. I think it keeps people's attention, and it's vivid enough that they can see themselves in the stories.
One of the reasons that we were so excited about the fact that she was writing the book is because RapidStart is one of our key focus areas for not only GP All Up, but really for the way that we're going to market to a new customer set. And so when we saw what she was writing, even on her blogs, that kind of led to me pushing her probably a little harder than she wanted to about getting the book done by Convergence, because I knew it was going to be a big event. Gloria and I actually co-presented during the partner pre-day on RapidStart and the rationale behind it. And we had a room of about, I would say there's probably 50 different partners in there. And there were some skeptics in there, which I accept. I mean, anytime that you're told new things, you're going to get some skeptics. But the fact is that we're really proving this out, and I think that when customers understand the value of being able to rapidly implement a new customer and the reduction in risk that those CXOs from those customers will get, that's where the benefit is going to come in, and customers are starting to realize that if this is available, why don't I use this, and why don't I use this more than I've used it in the past? And so I think that we're going to see a mindset with the customers that really says, this is the way that I want you to implement. I want you to use tools like this because it makes sense for our implementation.
Yeah.
Got it. And Jay, maybe just as a related note, I'm sure you hear from GP implementations, customers who have been successful, those like Gloria said who maybe end up sort of stranded and find a new partner to kind of fix something that might have gone wrong internally or with the relationship with an existing partner. I mean, what do you try to do in those situations, or what do you try to take away from those situations to improve it the next time around, or learn from it?
You mean improving the tool itself?
Improving the tool, improving the maybe the way that the implementation team brings it to the client.
Yeah, so I think some of it is training of the partner community. I mean, historically we've been a services-oriented product. In other words, we go in and we tend to sell about $2 of services for every $1 of GP sale or product sales. And that's historically been a big benefit to the partners. And we're not saying that you necessarily need to change that for all your customers. We're saying that for those customers where you're going to do services, continue to do that 2-to-1 ratio. Don't spend as much time and effort as you have historically on the configuration and migration portion. Take those hours and use them in areas that will build a better relationship with the customer. And then there are a whole other class of customers that I think that are underutilized, and those are the customers that are going and doing, searching on the word ERP on a Sunday night at their home and making a decision to buy potentially one of our competitor products, and we're hoping because of what we're doing with RapidStart that we can show that there's more value in going our direction. Because when we take a look at our competitors that work in that cloud space and work even on a on-site, on-premise deployment, when you look at the functionality that they get out of most of those, we're way ahead of them in functionality. I mean, for instance, I did a long study of GP versus NetSuite, and when you actually take a look at the functionality difference, we have much more functionality than they do across the entire product spectrum. But what we don't do really well is get that message out on a Sunday. And so that's what this tool hopefully will help drive is you can make that decision on Sunday, and guess what? By Monday or Tuesday, having made that decision, hopefully you can be up and running, you can be configured and have your data from your existing system migrated very quickly into Dynamics GP.
And those kinds of challenges, would you agree that those kind of challenges don't go away based on which solution you choose either? And if a vendor is not sort of owning up to that aspect of it, I would be, if I was a business trying to implement a new ERP, I might be suspicious of anyone trying to downplay that.
Exactly, because if you're doing any ERP implementation, the first thing you have to do is configure the system. And to be real honest, historically that has been a high value asset that's had to do that, because they have to have that intimate knowledge of the ERP system. What's great about this tool is we're saying, guess what, you can utilize a more junior person because you've already saved that configuration from another customer that you've already implemented on. And so initially you did have to use a high value asset, but hopefully in the future you can reduce that. And then that high value asset's doing more important things like building out that tight integration to another system that your customer needs, or creating that dashboard that they need to see for those key metrics that they want so they can drive their business more efficiently. And that's really where those high value assets should be used, not in configuration and hopefully not in data migration as well.
Got it. Gloria, anything to add there from the competitive aspect of that last point?
Well, yes, I actually recently met with a competitive software company. We are hosting GP ourselves, and I wanted to see a little bit about, what's my competition doing, and I make no bones about it. I was thinking maybe of taking on a second product, but I was quite surprised at their lack of knowledge about their service dollars to software ratio. They really didn't know. And I have done other research, so I know that they have a pretty high churn. What I saw was the opportunity to put a better product out there in a hosted environment. I think there are some resellers doing an excellent job of promoting the, free for 30 days. The Go ERP Cloud, Rose ASP, is doing that promotion, and My Apps Anywhere. Those are probably the two leading hosting partners. And, I